That'd be amazing.
So, yeah. I don't know whether to
Boy.
get my hair cut first or get a new pair of shoes or
That's right. That's right.
go and wallow in Barnes and Noble for an hour or two.
So many
That's right.
choices.
Oh,
That's right.
it's incriminating. So, now, I was going to say, if nobody's interested in this, I don't even know these people, most of them. So,
Do you mean the people who are going to be celebrating your birthday?
yeah, is anybody?
Yeah. They know you.
Well,
You don't know them. They know you.
yeah. Well, I know a lot of them by sight from
Yes.
Zoom, but that's about it.
Right.
So
But that's it.
I was going to say, if it didn't work out, I would not be hurt if you had to call it off.
Yeah, no, it is. It's, believe me, there will be a lot of angry people if something doesn't happen.
Oh,
So
Laura, when Linda Roberts was here, I said, "What if nobody wants to come?" And she said, "Oh, for our age group, she said, this is great. Everybody will be
Yes.
in on it." So
right.
that's good.
And that's, yeah, exactly it. I wanted, in fact, I need to get in touch with Jim and Linda about it also.
Yeah, they just live up the hill a little way.
Okay.
All right. So I think
Yeah.
I'm about ready to play the music and let people in.
All right. Let's do it.
All right.
Oh, we're live on Facebook.
We are.
Hi, Facebook. Good to see everybody. Chris, you look good with the mustache. We've got Chuck Burrow. Hello, Chuck. Good to see you. Ida May, Peter, Bert, Larry, Jimmy, Mr. Masters. Good to see you, Mr. Masters. Everybody, welcome everybody. This is the VBC Happy Hour. I am Todd DiPastino. I'm the executive director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and we're a nonprofit in Western Pennsylvania. And we have been doing these virtual events for almost a year now. And boy, are they wonderful. We're gathering people from all over the country and all over the world. And this last week or so, actually for the month of February, we're focusing our attention on Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm, because those are two wars. Well, it's a conflict, it's a war that gets overlooked. I always think of it that is squeezed on the one hand by Vietnam, by the wrenching experience of Vietnam, and on the other by the more recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it was such a short war. It was an overwhelming victory on the battlefield, but it does raise the question of, and this is something that I think I'll pass on maybe next week. Is it possible to win a war and lose a peace? I think it might be. Winston Churchill said something like, countries who could win wars don't generally make good peaces, and countries that can make a good peace can't generally win a war. So maybe there's something to that with respect to Desert Storm, and I thought we would talk about that maybe next week. But today we've invited some more Desert Storm, Desert Shield veterans back to kind of share their memories, share their stories. And we have a nice crew of people. I just want to let people know next week will be February 15th, Monday. We're going to focus on Desert Storm again, but this time the undersea war, submarines, the USS Louisville and the USS Pittsburgh, which were the two submarines that were directly involved in combat in Operation Desert Storm. And so we're going to get some submarine vets here talking. And if you know anything about submarine vets, you'll know it should be an interesting evening. I'm not saying anybody will understand what they're saying, but it'll be definitely an interesting evening. So join us next week. Before we get started with the program, I do want to let people know that we have the VBC magazine. It should have hit everybody's mailbox by now, I would think. I got mine, I think, a week ago in the mail. If you haven't received it, it could either be delayed in the mail, or it could be that we don't have your address. So if you'd like to, we'll send it to you for free. It's wonderful. It's full of veteran stories and other information. Let us know your address. You can either put it in the chat, directly chat it to me here on the Zoom side, on the Facebook Live side. You can send it to Ellie, ELLIE, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. Right, Ellie?
That's
Yes.
correct. Yes. And just so you know,
Ellie is joining us from.
Just so you know, your audio is cutting out just a little bit here and there. Missing some of the things that you're saying. Just a little bit.
Oh boy, that's bad. Okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna have to fix that audio. All right, I'll fix that audio. But let's see. But so anyhow, give us your address if you can. Turn on original sound. Okay, you can let me know. Ellie, please do keep letting me know, or anybody out there letting me know if I'm cutting out and audio problem. It only seems to happen when we go live, huh, Ellie? On
Yeah,
Zoom?
yeah.
Before in the waiting room, we weren't having a problem, right?
Exactly, yeah. Sounding good now, though.
Okay. I made a little audio adjustment. All right, we're always tinkering here. What was I saying? I was saying if you want the VBC magazine, we'll put it in the mail to you, but we need your address. Please do let us know your address if you don't get it. I also, if you don't get the magazine, I also want to let you know that our latest episode of the Scuttlebutt was released today. I listened to it today and found it extremely entertaining. The central question that they were addressing is how do we bridge the military-civilian divide? We had some wonderful guests addressing that issue, and they were talking about a lot of other things, everything from Tom Brady in the Super Bowl to drinking what's the spicy hot shots that you can
Fireball?
drink? Fireball.
Don't ask me how I know that. No.
Yeah. It was a very interesting and wonderful conversation. So, give it a listen if you can. Scuttlebutt. Ellie will put the link in the chat here on the Zoom side, on the Facebook Live side. I also want to invite everybody to join us on Wednesday morning. That'll be Wednesday, February 10th, for our coffee hour or our virtual breakfast. We will be having open conversation the way we have been these past few Wednesdays, and also continuing to plan Julia Parsons' 100th birthday party on March 2nd. Right, Julia?
Right, I guess.
She's been a good sport about going along with it. And then we have Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Generation 9/11. And in that one, Sean Hall will be kind of leading a discussion, trying to understand the links between actually Operation Desert Storm and the attacks of 9/11 and the subsequent war in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that should be a really interesting conversation. I'll be there Thursday at 7 p.m. And I'm not sure if we have Henry Shepke with us, do we? Do we have Henry here?
Yeah,
Let me see. Hey, Henry, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. I want to let people know that we're still doing the stamp drive for Henry. Henry is sending out 500 thank you notes to 500 World War II veterans. He has ways of finding out where they are, and he sends them a note, and he asks them for their autograph in return. And so he needs stamps to do that, first-class stamps. And I know that there's a lot of stamps in the mail to you right now. They may not have reached you already, but have you received any stamps from any of our people yet?
Yeah, I've received many stamps.
You have?
Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, that's so great.
Today. I received like 3 books of stamps today.
Oh, how wonderful. Oh, that's terrific. Well, thank you, Henry, for that project, because again, the easy thing for us to do is send you stamps. The hard thing to do is to, look up addresses and write the notes and get the notes out there and back. So thank you for the work you're doing, Henry. Thank you for joining us every week. It's always great to have a younger person join us to kind of hear these stories and make sure they get passed on. We appreciate that very much. And then there was one more thing I wanted to do before we got on with our veterans and having them share stories, I was thinking earlier today about the impact of war on language. Many of you know I'm a historian, and I'm actually a cultural historian, not a military historian. And I remember early on, one of the very first books I read that excited me about history was a book called The Great War in Modern Memory by Paul Fussell. And it made an argument that World War I fundamentally changed the English language in a fundamental structural kind of way. And that there was a whole new way of seeing, a whole new kind of consciousness that was brought into being by World War I. And I've always had that thought when I think about the impact of war on our culture and on language. World War II, every war seems to introduce words or concepts or phrases that then get kind of swept into the general culture and used. World War II is snafu. Before World War II, I wonder if anybody really ever used the word appeasement, for example, which is a concept and a word that we've used ever since. Speaking of fireballs, one word that came from Vietnam introduced a whole new dictionary of words, essentially, to our culture. Before Vietnam, oh boy, I guess, this is a family show, but, a lot of the words that are used in war aren't, generally family appropriate. But one that is still used is wasted. If somebody has drunk too much, they're drunk. They're called wasted. That's a word from Vietnam. That's a Vietnam War word. Escalation, a Vietnam War word. And so I was thinking this morning, did Desert Storm introduce a new language? I mean, Desert Storm was 42 days long, so it didn't have a long time to make a big impact on the culture. But off the top of my head, I was able to think about a little bit more than half a dozen words or concepts or kind of practices that came out of Desert Storm. And I'll be curious to hear what you have to say about these, because I may be wrong. But the first I thought of is collateral damage. I remember that being a term that came out of Operation Desert Storm, and it came out of the use of especially precision-guided smart bomb technology. It's a euphemism, a military euphemism for, civilian combatants who get injured or hurt or their property gets damaged during war. Collateral damage was a word that kind of came into our general lexicon, and I think we've been using it now, kind of ironically, ever since, as well as seriously. Also, there's a terrible movie. You could when they take a word and they use it for a title of a movie, that it's entered the general vocabulary. And so there was a bad movie I think made in 2002 called Collateral Damage. Mother of all blank. That definitely came from Desert Storm, because early in January, when it was clear that the U.S. and the coalition was going to cross into Kuwait to liberate Kuwait in a big land battle, dictator Saddam Hussein said, "The battle in which you are locked today is the mother of all battles." And I've learned since that construction, mother of all blank, is a very common phrase in Arabic, but it's one that really translated into English. It was a memorable soundbite, I think, for us. I do remember that being quoted a lot. And so now you hear that all the time. Mother of all pigs is a novel. Mother of all jobs. Mother of all messes is the economist's take on Brexit. Mother of all hot sauces. Mother of all pandemics is what you might call the COVID-19. And then there's mother of all mother. So it's a phrase that has kind of carried on from Desert Storm. The other is smart technology. We take that for granted today. We have smart appliances, smart TV behind me. We have smart toasters, I think, and any kind of object that could be plugged into a wall, I think, is considered smart now. But that phraseology really came from smart bombs. And I do remember watching CNN, which had 24-hour news coverage of the war, of showing kind of video capture of bombs falling and hitting their targets. And it was really the war, the Gulf War, the first Gulf War was really the war where these smart bombs, which had been around for a long time, different versions of them, but they were used in much higher quantities than they had been used before. So I think that comes from Desert Storm. Line in the sand. That's a phrase that you'll hear every once in a while. And that was, that's a biblical phrase, I would think. Ben Wright might be able to correct us on that. But it's certainly one that President George W. Bush used at the beginning of Desert Shield in August of 1990. Humvee, I don't remember even being aware of Humvees before Desert Storm. I think, we'd all been used from World War II through the 1970s. We had been used to, or I had been used to, seeing pictures of Jeeps. The design hadn't changed that much for the general kind of all-purpose vehicle for the U.S. military. And suddenly it seemed to me in 1990, 1991 that you had these contraptions, which were called Humvees, high mobility, multi-purpose wheeled vehicle. So the Humvees had been around, but I hadn't been aware of them. And I think many Americans hadn't been aware of them. Is a word that kind of entered. It's not that these words didn't exist before, but we didn't use them as much. This word was used especially with the stealth technology associated with this fighter plane, the F-117. Maybe Larry Guggens can tell us a little bit about it, or Ben Wright, about what made them so stealthy and so cool looking. But this was definitely the plane of Operation, the aircraft of Operation Desert Storm. And I also think there's something to this. The White House and the Defense Department really did tend to call it Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm. They did not call it the Gulf War, the Persian Gulf War. And I do think they deliberately avoided the term war. I think that was a deliberate thing. And I think ever since, the same thing was done with the Korean War. It wasn't, Harry Truman didn't care. Because there's something a little drastic and frightening about calling something a war. So, the term was called an operation, and there had been an operation, people will remember, just a year before in Panama, Operation Just Cause. Now, the Panamanians, I believe, called that a war. They declared war on the United States first, and then the United States responded with Operation Just Cause. So I think, in other words, operation is another one of those euphemisms that comes out of a war situation to avoid the use of the term war. And then here's what I'm unsure about. And I asked my wife, Stephanie Ross, who has a wonderful memory, far better than mine. I asked her, were yellow ribbons prominent before Desert Storm? And she could not remember. I have a memory of there being yellow ribbons during the Iran hostage crisis, but nothing like the proliferation of yellow ribbons around trees in 1990 and 1991. And this is something that actually this morning, because I couldn't really remember, I looked it up and I found that this whole yellow ribbon symbolism goes back to England in the 1600s. Puritans were using yellows as symbols of men going off to war. There was a World War I song about, she wore a ribbon. There's a wonderful movie. She wore it with John Wayne. John Ford movie, I think. Ed Blank will be able to let us know. She wore a yellow ribbon, I think. So, and then there's the Tony Orlando and Dawn song that was popular in the 1970s. Tie a yellow ribbon around the tree. But I think that the yellow ribbon symbolism of support the troops came from Desert Storm. And in fact, and I'll ask people too if they remember, were there yellow ribbons during Vietnam? I don't think I've ever seen that kind of anything festooned with yellow ribbons in the 1960s, early 70s. But if I'm off base, you let me know. And also then finally, I do think like even the term support the troops is something that came, the phrase support the troops, the imperative to support the troops is something that came during Desert Shield and Desert Storm as a direct reaction to the failure of the nation to support the troops in Vietnam. It became an imperative that people became conscious of and wanted to display their support. And I think that happened for the first time in 1990, 1991. Am I off base in any of this, Mary or Ben or anybody?
I was going to say, this is Mary. I don't remember yellow ribbons in Vietnam either. I don't remember them at all. I remember sitting, at dinner watching the screen, of all dead go by, not Yellow Ribbons. I saw a couple of comments come up, and I think Don Grimcheck said something about the Scud missile. But I agree with you. That became such a big thing then, but people don't say Scud now. Like if you said the word Scud to somebody, they wouldn't know what it was. But I remember we had drinking games in college that every time Will Twister said Scud, we'd take a drink or a shot, and you'd be bombed in a half an hour because he said Scud so often. And the other one that I remember was shock and awe. That was a thing. But again, I don't think that translated to now. You know what I mean? That's my generation. I was in college when this happened. So, yeah, but there's actually certain phrases. Yeah.
So I know my audio once again is terrible. Does somebody else want to chime in?
Yeah. Todd, I don't remember any yellow ribbons in Vietnam either. But just as a postscript to something you said earlier, John Ford did direct She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. And something that stands out for me about that is it's one of the occasions in which somebody was nominated for an Oscar or won one. In this case, John Wayne was nominated and said, gee, I thought I was better in something else that same year, Sands of Iwo Jima. And I'm inclined to agree with him, but okay, enough.
Thank you, Ed. That's great. That's Ed. Chris Perlo.
Yeah, Todd and everybody, I believe that Tony Orlando's song, there were no yellow ribbons that I recall during the Vietnam War, but I'm pretty sure Tony Orlando's song was about a Vietnam War veteran. Because
that's what I thought.
Time frame of the song and some of the lyrics. So he was addressing that, but I don't recall that being a big thing. Also, at the end of Desert Storm, truthfully, I believe the reaction of the country was a contrition for what they did not do to returning Vietnam veterans. And part of that was we were able to express ourselves because this was a return to the front, the advancing front wars and the tactics that we were all familiar with, as opposed to the jungle warfare and the guerrilla tactics and the piecemeal return of troops in Vietnam. So it was our chance to express, to right a wrong. And that was pretty much the prevalent feeling and the feeling I got from the parades and things that I saw and attended.
I would agree with that, Chris. It was such a big deal, wasn't it? And then finally, in those parades for Desert Storm, the Vietnam veterans would be there, and you saw people going to them on the sidelines, and like you say, an act of contrition, apologizing for what they didn't do then, and it was really moving. I mean, again, I was in college, so it was a very moving thing for me to see. Yeah, very much so. And I like how you said, the song was about a different time, but it was trying to do this, and that we have a history of doing that, don't we? Wadsworth's poem to gather us for the Civil War, but he wrote it about the Revolution, right? MASH was a commentary on Vietnam, but you couldn't have that commentary then, so you made it about Korea. And so we have always done that to say, okay, I'm going to talk about this, but I'm going to put it here so it's not to upset with the status quo now, or to improve the status quo, I guess. Yeah, that's a good observation.
And once again, I asked Stephanie Ross, my wife, what the song Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree was about. And she said it was about somebody in prison.
That's what I thought.
Somebody in prison. And I know I've tried to disagree with my wife and prove her wrong many times over the years. And I have a really bad track record with that. So I'm inclined to believe her.
Todd, it is about a guy getting out of prison, because the opening lines are, "I'm coming home. I've done my time. I've got to. I finally learned to know what is and isn't mine." It was like he stole a car and got sent to the big house for a couple of years or something.
Great. Very good. Thank you for that, Greg. Greg Yost. We have such smart people joining us. I love it.
Hey, Todd, could you tell us the name of that book that you mentioned again? The Great War and what? I missed it.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. The Great War and Modern Memory. And it's by Paul Fussell, who wrote many very good books. He himself was a combat platoon leader in World War II in Europe. and he wrote a very good memoir of his own war experience. And then he wrote, it's a tough book about World War II called, I think, see, when you get older, your memory tends to go. I think it's called Wartime, one word. Wartime. Wartime, one word. And it's about American culture during World War II. Another excellent book. Excellent book. Okay.
Hey, Todd, can I add something?
Hey, Peter. Yes, absolutely.
So now, keeping in mind that my MOSs were MI and military intelligence and military police, so the only time I ever refer to the armor units are as treadheads. They used to wear a yellow kerchief, and that was also one of the branches of where they think the yellow ribbon actually came from. And in addition to all my smart aleck remarks as well, there is a cadence that I learned in basic in 1986 about a yellow ribbon. Not a yellow bird. The yellow bird you can't even repeat in mixed company nowadays. But there's the yellow ribbon one. So it was something that was prevalent, before Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And to be honest with you, when we got back from, the Gulf War, we were kind of, surprised to see yellow ribbons as well. It was nothing we knew about downrange.
So you were surprised when you got back from Saudi Arabia, Peter?
Yeah. We, when I got back, we flew into Andrews Air Force Base, and I was stationed at Fort Meade. And I just remember the ride back was, they were all over the trees and all that. And we're kind of looking at each other like, what the hell's with the yellow ribbons?
Can't hear you.
Audio.
I spend my whole life telling people to unmute, and now I have to unmute. Oy, oy. Yeah, so this is a picture that you sent me, Peter, right? Of your home, I believe?
No, I don't think that was the one. The one we had was in a gymnasium.
Oh, it was a gymnasium. Okay. Okay. Very good. Well, I do have some pictures of you I want to share. But I thought I would start with Jamie Moore, who, Jamie, are you with us here today? I think I saw you here. Yes, you are. Hi, Jamie. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. You sent me some pictures too, and I wanted to share them because we specifically last week, somebody specifically said, can we get a Navy vet to talk about their experience of Desert Storm? And you were not on hand, so I'm glad you're here today. And I thought I'd show some pictures that you sent me. This is one of them. This is you?
It's me with hair.
And I'm taken by your red shirt.
I was a MS. I was a mess management specialist. So I was the cook and I was the baker. I think I was a baker at that time. I think I was 19 years old, and I was on the USS Biddle. We were the flagship for the Sixth Fleet. So we had an admiral embarked ship on the USS Biddle. There it is. I think I have a picture of us steaming with the blue ocean behind it, which is a pretty cool picture as well. That's my kitchen.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there you go. That's a cool picture. And we basically diverted a lot of ships that were going into the Red Sea and diverted them out of before they went into the. I guess we sat at the Gulf of Aqaba. I think that's the correct area where we sat. And we would just basically, we had not an Air Force battalion, but we had a helicopter on the back of our ship. And that helicopter was basically doing diversion of ships, as well as loading, getting onto boats and getting onto other freight that was coming into the Red Sea and then diverting it away. So it was a very interesting time that we were in, and I'm assuming a lot of other ships were doing the same. But we were the eyes in the sky for the aircraft carriers, and obviously went over the equator. That's the polywog.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember the word. Sorry, I'm just getting. I've been on the road for about 5 hours, and I came back to here, and I got jumped on this. So.
Oh, I'm glad that you.
Go back.
I'm
Yeah,
very
there you
glad
go.
that you jumped on. But I want to ask you two questions. One is I've never seen that red shirt. But I'm big into these details. So this is what a mess or a
mess
Navy.
management specialist is what we were called.
Okay. And that's standard issue for a mess specialist in the Navy.
At least on our ship, it was. One of the things that I was a little bit different than a traditional mess management specialist is that I was ESWAS qualified. So if you know what ESWS, so it's essentially that pin that I have on my chest. It basically signifies that you as an individual know everything from the top to the bottom of the ship, from the missile systems to the length, the width, the draft. So essentially understanding all of the war, all of the equipment that exists on the ship from the top to the bottom, the radar systems to everything that was on the USS Biddle, how we produce water, how we steam through the ocean. It was, you learned a basic steam cycle, and you also learned, the alternative fuels that we ended up using from a gas turbine if something went down. So it was an interesting time that I was in, and I was pretty progressive. I loved what I was doing, and I really learned a lot from other individuals, because that's what it was made to do. It was made for you to go talk to the boiler technician and understand how the steam room worked, how the engine room worked.
It's fascinating to me. Ihab, you have a question? You have your hand raised?
I don't have a question. I just jumped in this call and I'm watching you a little bit. I just wanted to say that Desert Storm is one of the first wars that actually it was highly requested and implemented where to avoid civilian targets, and because they actually have the resources, and it was the first time where high precision smart bombs were used. And what I mean by that, they were like, as we can precisely target, enemy targets. We're just gonna target very precise, locations. I will say positions. And even though, for example, when I actually witnessed it myself, where not a what is it? Not a fighter. The ground attack, airplane will come in, and what they do is they, like, whenever they want to hit a bridge, for example, I actually saw that myself when I was a kid. What they did is they just dive, like they pretty much dive in and they open machine gun on the river, literally just open the machine gun, trying to scare everybody else because there was too much jam traffic on the bridge. And the people just noticed, oh, this guy wants to attack the bridge. So the people just like drove off the bridge and just waited on the other side of the river trying to see how's this show gonna end. And then actually, the fighters, jets will make a couple of spins and then drop the bomb. And the bomb was so precise, hit the bridge right in the middle and just breaks it. I actually got to see, because I'm from Iraq, and some of you guys don't know me, Desert Storm, I was about 5-6 years old, and I was in Nasiriyah, and that actually happened right in front of me, because my mom was washing clothes. There's under a bridge, there's like a boat ramp, so the women would go and wash clothes because there wasn't running water during that time. It was all got like, I guess, bombed or whatever happened to it. But I think that was itself, you know, I still remember that was great because there were way too many people on that bridge. And if it wasn't just precise bombing, they could have just dropped the bomb and gone. I mean, this guy was coming back and forth. Well, first people, I guess, didn't know what's going on. So they might thought maybe, I don't know, it's an Iraqi fighter jet. I don't know. But he was going back and forth and people were just like looking and just cheering, and all that stuff. Then in the midst of all that, this guy, like, all kind of rockets firing at him, anti-machine gun. This guy just slid. And this guy just got tired and he just opened his 25 millimeter machine gun and just went like, just like in the middle of the river. People were like, oh crap, there's some serious action going on. So people went both sides of the river and they just stopped and just watched it. They knew what's going to happen. And so I think wars are bad, and I hope they don't happen. But sometimes wars, they should happen, like World War II. That was mortal war, and I think Desert Storm was as well, because so it wasn't like a political, like Vietnam. There's all these controversies about, you know, and it's all political and all that stuff. Even the war in Iraq in 2003, it's very controversial until today, because a lot of people say there was no weapons of mass destructions. The evidence doesn't show Saddam he was working with Al Qaeda, and all of the Al Qaeda were not Iraqis, or has nothing to do with Iraq. Anyhow, but I think Desert Storm itself was different. It's a moral war that I would say, and basically worth it. So that's pretty much my comment on Desert Storm.
Thank you, Ahab. And people should know Ahab was an interpreter with the U.S. Army in Iraq in 2003 to 2007 or so. He came to the U.S. And are you still a member of the PA National Guard, Ahab, or are you out now?
I'm out.
You're out.
Okay. I can't pass the PT test anymore. My knees are so wet out. I can't run.
Oh, that's sad. That's sad. Thank you, Ahab. This is so great. And Ahab, I was going to, I'll be in contact with you about being on Thursday night one evening. But I want to go back to Jamie, and Jamie's job here. It fascinated me. I'll ask you some other time, Jamie, how you got the a job in the galley. Was that something that you asked for, or was that what you were assigned? And I mean, people talk about how good you eat in the Navy. Look at that. That's like Exhibit A right there. A cake with CG-34 on it. Did you make that cake?
Yeah, I did all the baking for the ship when I first got there. This is actually the captain's quarters, and this is his kitchen. If you would go right through where that cake's at, you'd go into his stateroom, where he had dinner, or there was a table that basically I would pass through food if there was a meeting that was going on, or I would serve in that kitchen or in his stateroom. To answer your question, I love cooking. I have a passion for cooking. I've always cooked in my kitchen ever since I've been, 9 or 10 years old. So cooking was part of my life, and it made sense for me to go to the military primarily just to pay my way through college. So that's what I did.
Great. How great. And this is the old line crossing ceremony. You cross the equator.
Correct. That's going across the equator. That the picture with the green in it. That's it's an initiation that you go through when you go over the equator. You become a polywog. You start off as a polywog, and then you become a shellback once you go over the equator. And the shellbacks basically put on the initiation for you. They abuse you in every type of way. And it's just coming of arms, or coming of, not arms, what would be the right word?
Coming of age.
Coming of
Rite
age, thank you.
passage.
Yeah.
See what you missed out on, Julia, in being in the Navy in World War II and not going overseas?
Well,
Missed
I
out
would
on this
like to
coming
have
on.
gone overseas.
I know you would have, and maybe you could have done this nonsense.
I would have enjoyed it.
I'm sure you would have. I'm sure you would have. This, like you said, a great picture here. And what is this a picture of? Who is this?
Your pictures aren't advancing. I think you're still on the kitchen, at least on my end. Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Okay, let me.
Your Zoom audio is also very low. I don't know if you manually lowered it, but you might want to raise it a little bit.
Thank you, Ellie. Yeah, I'm having audio problems. I may try and escape and get another mic. I don't see this picture now. Two
Just
men in white.
black screen.
Oh boy, that's not good. We had this problem before. So what I'm gonna do
Is it really snowing that much at your place?
that you can see. Yeah, that's the TV behind me.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to have to sign off and then sign back in, unfortunately. But before I do, let me try one more time picture. Because I know Ben Rodriguez sent me. Do you see this or no?
Yes, that works,
Just
and your
blank?
sound's a lot better now too.
Really?
Although now I
So
hear
all I
echo.
have to do is threat. Darn it, darn it, darn it. All right. All right. So Ben Rodriguez, why don't you talk about your service, and I'm going to run and get another mic. All right.
Sure. I was a Marine Corps reservist, enlisted in 1987. Was in the Marine Corps Reserves in Baltimore with a Combat Engineer Unit till 1998, so about 11 years. And when I got activated to go over to Desert Storm, it was a pretty huge deal because up until that point, I think so many of us, so many of my fellow Marines, it was peacetime, and we were going in to some respects, maybe as a lark or maybe for college money. I think, but if we were smart, we probably wouldn't have done Marines because Marines didn't give nearly as much money as the Army or National Guard. But that was a big reason. So it was interesting when we got activated. There's maybe a handful of guys in my platoon and battalion that stopped coming. They didn't show up anymore. They were like not in it for what we were really meant there to be. So they kind of stopped coming. Eventually, I don't know whatever happened to them. But this picture, it was taken aboard the USS Mount Vernon, LSD-39, an amphibious ship that's at the bottom of the sea somewhere now, is decommissioned and uses target practice. It's no longer with us. Great ship. And what was interesting about my experience, and one thing I have to say is and all the veterans here, they know this, that everyone's experience changes from not only the era that you served in, but the branch you served in, the locations wherever you were stationed. Everything is so different about, you could pick one conflict like the Gulf War or even one battle, and you'll get so many different stories, which is very important to get so you get the whole picture. But everyone's experience is so different. And mine was an experience from a weekend warrior kind of person who went over and really got to do, if it hadn't been for the Gulf War, I don't think I would have ever experienced life at sea like a traditional old school Marine would have back in the day, especially an amphibious experience I wouldn't have ever had. And so I'm grateful for that. We actually did hit the beach in I think last time I was here last week, I mentioned I hit the beach in a place called Ras Al Mashab, which is just below the border, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. And it wasn't a hot beach by any means, but we were on, what was different about it compared to, conflicts prior was our landing crafts were LCACs. They were the hovercrafts. So, and of course, those are not meant to be landed on any kind of hot beach whatsoever. So we were, of course, very worried. We didn't know that they weren't going to use us to go right into Kuwait City or into Kuwait proper, because we just thought we were going to be cannon fodder. So we landed and we went up kind of behind everybody, and it was relatively speaking, the war was pretty quick, 100 hours, right? And then we just got back on ship when it was over, and we waited and waited and waited. And you were talking about the yellow ribbons. When we returned to Baltimore finally by the beginning of July, I remember we got on a commercial flight, our unit, in California to fly back to Baltimore. It was a commercial flight, and we were all in our chocolate chip uniforms, our camis, the chocolate chip desert uniforms, and we got so many weird looks, and so many people were very confused. What are you guys doing, and why are you dressed like this? We're like, we got back from the Gulf War. They're like, wasn't that over back in March? And they're like, well, yes, there's still a lot of people still there. So they were very surprised, and it was a little kind of also kind of sad because when we got back to Baltimore, you could tell, and we'd seen pictures and heard from folks back home about all the yellow ribbon stuff and the support, but it was like showing up at a party afterwards and the mess, at a party, and there's nothing left but stale pizza and empty cans of beer. The ribbons were gone or ripped off the trees, or nobody had bothered to maybe replace a worn out ribbon, and the signs weren't so much there anymore. It was like everyone had moved on to the next thing, and even our own fellow Marines from that were also in our unit that were with other units in other places during the war. They had gotten back way before us. They had heard and they thought that we had never gotten off our ship. So it was always this battle of feeling validation for what we did. And, they thought we stayed on the ship the entire time and just never did anything. And we did get to go on the sand, and we did go up, and I kind of feel lucky that I didn't have to do anything more than I did or see anything more than I did. I think a lot of people are sometimes, often blessed that they made it. It's but everyone's experience is different. It was definitely long. I definitely got to a new respect for what the Navy does on a day-to-day basis. I never did pick on them so much as I did
Dylan?
before that. Yeah, that is Dylan. That's my friend Dylan Murray on the left, the tall guy.
Oh, I didn't realize I was on the speaker. Sorry.
Yeah, we were both in the same unit. So what's cool about reserve units is because you serve with people from your kind of home or area, it's very likely that you'll probably be able to keep in touch with them a little better because a lot of us are still around in the same area. So I think out of all of these 4 other guys, I'm still in touch with about 3 of them, and I lost touch with maybe 1. But those were our trucks that we went in. Just I would remember is a lot of sand, a lot of convoy operations, a lot of endless driving that never ended, a lot of bad weather, darkness, hailstorms, sandstorms, rain. It was just horrific. The smoke from the oil fires making it super dark in the middle of the day. Just a lot of just ugliness. There wasn't anything pretty that I ever saw there in my experience there. But yeah, and we were as reservists, we get probably, especially Marine reservists, we get the last scraps of anything. So we actually went into Kuwait wearing woodland camouflage. The only reason I have the chocolate chip camis right there in this picture is because this picture was taken after we got back from Kuwait and we were waiting to get back on board our ship. So we got back from Kuwait and they had the correct camouflage uniforms waiting for us, which didn't help us any after the fact.
After the fact.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's great. That's great. And so where are you here?
This is probably some sort of staging area, either just inside Kuwait or just over probably somewhere back near a staging area probably to the west of Al-Mashab somewhere. Wherever it was, we were getting our gear back together to head back, and we were pretty relaxed. So it was already well past the ceasefire.
Okay.
Yeah, and someone mentioned the jungle boots. Yeah, I don't remember what the what do you call them? Regulations were, but we had a little variety. We had the boots. You either had all leather black ones. Some people had the black jungle boots. Some people liked the green, almost Vietnam era jungle boots. I don't know if they were okay, but nobody really said anything to us. Of course, this is back in the days before they came up with those. I don't even know what you call them now. Those desert boots now that you don't have to shine or keep polished. Lucky. Oh my gosh. Totally jealous of that.
Yeah. So how does that work? And then this is a digression, and I hope you could hear me now. I'm using a headphone here. How does that work now with basic training and boot camp? Do you not need to know how to shine or you don't have to shine shoes anymore because the boots are, the suede stuff?
I don't know. Hopefully there's someone in here more younger than me that might know what they're doing nowadays.
You still have to shine low quarters, the dress shoes for your dress uniform.
Okay. And Leo West. Yes, Leo. Let's want you unmute yourself there.
Well, when I was in the Guard, we had to shine the concrete floor.
Yeah, yes. That's a good one. You're totally right. It's concrete floor, but it still needs to be waxed with a buffer.
With a
buffer.
So it wouldn't surprise me if you have to shine the suede boots.
Yes, you're right. And then take off the polish. Leo West.
When I was in Camp Gordon, there was a Marine in our school at Teletype, and he was upset because when he came to live with the Army, he had to shine his boots, and he always had the boondockers that they never shined in the Marine Corps at that time, and so he was upset because he had to shine them.
He had to shine them because you have higher standards in the Army, right?
Right.
That's it. So I'm going to show this picture now, Jamie Moore. I don't know if you can see it. I hope you can.
I can see it.
Good. Tell us who this is.
That is boot camp. That is that line that's across my forehead is called a grinder reminder. And that basically, I was in San Diego, and that was the only area that did not see the sun. Well, obviously I had clothes on, but my face got so tan being in, with a naval cap on. That's the line that was on your head, and they called it a grinder reminder, because you definitely got burnt, from here down.
Yes.
You got the age before sunscreen, right?
Yes. And in Navy speak, a grinder is the
parking lot.
Yeah, the parking lot. The
that you march on.
Thank you for completing my sentences. And who's the man sitting next to you?
That was our, I guess he was our boot camp. He was a petty officer or chief. He was a chief that oversaw our group. I can't remember what you call it. There's a name for it. Recruit trainer or.
Yeah. So not like the equivalent of a drill sergeant in the Army?
Company
okay.
Commander.
Say again?
Company commander.
Yeah, there you go. Company commander.
Why is he smiling?
Because we're done. This is the last of our hurrah. I was saying goodbye. I think my mother took that picture.
Oh, that's great. That's so great.
Yeah.
And then this is a great one too.
So this is two captains. This was their the captain to the left, or to my. I'm actually, if you're looking at the picture, the gentleman to the left, to the other one in the gray hair, that's Captain Giannetti in the gray hair. He's not retiring. He's leaving the ship, and Captain Harlow is coming on to be the captain. So I was the captain's personal cook between the two of them, and I was then going to be Captain Harlow's cook.
Okay. And how long did you spend in the Navy, Jamie?
Just 4 years.
4 years. You got in really because you wanted it was an avenue to an education.
Yep.
Did you get that education?
Yep. I went to Penn State and directly out of college, directly out of the Navy.
Looking back now, what do those 4 years in the Navy mean to you?
Oh, I loved it. It was my probably the best time of my life. It was definitely something that I really enjoyed. I traveled the world. I mean, I have no complaints at all, and I got an education out of it. So that's really what I was striving to do, and it was something that made sense at that time.
And Desert Storm stands out among those 4 years as a particularly, crystal time in your memory?
Yeah, I definitely have some war stories and some things that have gone on the ship. And, we lost our rudder in the middle of the Red Sea. That was definitely something that was concerning. We were at tow going through the Suez Canal. We were at tow the whole way through to Toulon, France. We spent Christmas in Toulon, and then we went into Desert Shield, or Desert Storm, I should say. Desert Storm. What did that start in March? Correct.
Desert Storm started in January 16th, and finished up in February 28th.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question. Were you warned of any potential danger at sea?
No, I think that my mother and my family knew more information than anyone that was on a ship. I think that was, I don't know if that was on purpose, but obviously CNN and the news media was definitely much more in tune with what was happening than any of us. So I think that, I couldn't really say anything to obviously your family, other than maybe through letters and whatnot, but they knew more than me, because it was crazy. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. I remember getting letters and I'd be like, what the hell, how do they know this? Yeah, that was weird.
That is funny. And there are some great comments here in the chat. I won't repeat any of them, but I do encourage you to look at them. Am I too loud now, Jimmy?
Yes.
I'm too loud. Oh man.
Yes, you are. You went from real low, and now it's like you're loud. So just turn it down a little bit.
I need to. Yeah, I'll figure it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Tim Stites. Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm great. Todd, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I love your Coke bottle glasses in the prior picture. So you made a smart aleck remark, and this is from a Marine, Tim Stites. You made a smart aleck remark about Jamie's glasses in basic training.
Yeah, the Marine Corps, the motto is, stay in long enough. If I stayed in long enough, I'll be a Lance Corporal again. And so we're always full of these smart comments. Get us demoted.
When did you join the Marine Corps and why?
I joined in 1984, and on my father's birthday, and I had dropped out of college and was looking for something to get me motivated. Joined the reserves back then. They called us 90-day reservists. We'd spent the first summer in boot camp and the second summer in our MOS training, and I was infantry at the beginning. I later ended up moving to military police. And I guess my motivation really came from, as you know, the story of my great uncle, who was in the Rescue Corps during World War II. And a book was written about him called Hell is So Green, and his adventures of being dropped into the jungles of Burma to help the downed pilots, make their way out of the jungle, or administer medical care or whatever needed. And fascinating stories and really interesting life that he led. But his service to the country and his desire to do something positive to help fellow servicemen and women during that conflict kind of lit the fire for me when I was a young person. Motivated.
What did your father have to say when you told him you were dropping out of college and joining the Marines on his birthday? On his birthday, no less.
Well, the interesting thing was it was the reserves, and Ben alluded to this before, that a lot of us were doing this for college money or misadventure, I guess. We didn't have ROTC at my college. It was a small liberal arts college in Burlington, Vermont, and so it was an opportunity for me to tap into the GI Bill. The recruiter sold me with the line that the reservists haven't been activated since the Korean War. You've got nothing to worry about. And
famous last words.
The famous last words.
You mentioned that your uncle's war story, and I read this book. It's an absolutely wonderful book. I really do encourage everybody to read it if you have any interest in World War II, especially the war in the CBI, the China Burma India Theater. He was a rescue rescue jumper. They didn't have helicopters in those days, so to rescue, you had to parachute out of an airplane and then find the person you were going to rescue, and then you had to be rescued. I mean, this was not an easy job at all, and it is a real adventure story of William Diebold's experiences in Burma. Hell is So Green is what it's called. Hell is So Green. And I will hasten to say that he did have a short and pretty unhappy life, I think, when he got home from war. But I want to go back to Tim's picture here. He looks like a good Marine. And then there you are in Desert Storm.
And you'll have to note that the magazine is Mad Magazine. You know, they were sending me all kinds of great things to keep us entertained, keep our minds busy and engaged.
I'm not going to make any Marine jokes. Nothing about cartoons or anything like
Right,
that.
had to have pictures, very short words.
I mean,
one syllable words.
They issue coloring books, and so there you are. Is this in Saudi Arabia?
That's correct.
Saudi Arabia.
In the middle of the desert. We were charged with building a prison camp for the Iraqi soldiers that were being taken prisoner. They were expecting a pretty big swell of them when the ground war started, which actually happened. I think we processed about 20,000 in a matter of just a few days. But I don't know what we really had limited resources, much to what I think Ben spoke to earlier about reservists. That you can see there that I had my woodland camouflage on. Like they said, we looked like trees in the desert. We would stand up, and it would look like somebody planted a pine tree in the middle of the desert. And of course, when we landed in Saudi Arabia, we really were a dysfunctional unit. And but we were, the Marines are always, beg, borrow, and steal, and they are always very ingenious, I guess. And we reacquired a couple of Saudi buses that were like the public transportation buses you see around Pittsburgh, only we had one that didn't have a windshield. And so you envision someone driving, platoon full of soldiers into the desert with head wrappings as the wind blowing through the front of the Saudi bus. And it was quite a comical sight. You'd see all these Humvees and military vehicles, and then here comes Port Authority transportation down the road. Of course, there were a few other vehicles that we acquired, and to be careful what I say, because I probably could still be court-martialed, but reacquired.
And we have a Marine colonel with us, Brad Washabaugh. So yeah, you better be
right,
careful.
Right. Well, there was an Army general, I think, who was missing a Jeep because there was a vehicle that had an interesting star on the side of it, and it took us at least 3 weeks with rubbing sand to get the star off the side of the vehicle. But
you seriously did that?
No, I heard somebody did it, but not me. I was.
That's crazy.
But we had to do well. We went down to the port to get vehicles, and they don't have it's not like valet vehicle service where they've got the keys hanging on a board and you pick up your vehicle. It was like just take the one. It's the first one in line, and the first one in line happened to have some stars on it. But
Tim, did anybody tell you to do this, or did you just do it?
Well, we pretty much knew that we needed to kind of get our own transportation to our destination, so we kind of had to be a little inventive to get out there. And so we get out there, and we've got all this concertina wire and rebar, and there's about 100 of us, and like 2 sledgehammers and like 2 gloves. And so we basically built this thing in the middle of the desert, with rebar and concertina wire. And Ben, I know we had some combat engineers that came by to help us at some point. Ben may have come by and helped us at some point.
And what were you building? Just the bunkers?
Well, we were building a holding facility for processing prisoners. So as soon as they came off the front, they would come to our facility, and we were segregating them and we had I&I, interpretation, interrogation, as part of our unit. And like the pictures that you saw early on of the Iraqis that were being taken off of the oil rigs that were showing up in some of the, I think Newsweek and some other magazines, were taken at one of our holding facilities, where they had brought them, the SEALs brought them and did their interrogations at our facility. But our facility was to support the Marines. We were attached to the 1st Marine Corps Division, and the prisoners that they were, taking, and then they came in droves because they were just giving up. At that point, they'd been pounded for such a long time during the air war that they were, happy to see us and get 3 squares, and a blanket.
Did you talk to any of them? Could you talk to any of them?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of these folks, they're just like you and me. They were conscribed to go on the human shield on the front line. I mean, it wasn't until kind of weeks into the ground war that we started to see the hardened troops. The Republican Guard troops. But we knew that there were some that were kind of interspersed with the regular troops, and their purpose was to basically kill anybody that retreated in the units. But there were many that were doctors and spoke English very well. Your average Joes like you and me, they just gave them a rifle and sent them to the front line. We were really worried because of a lot of them carried gas masks that were left over from the Iran-Iraq war. And There was some concern that they, had anthrax or other, dangerous things in them as we were searching their bodies and equipment. Some of that stuff might be, re-released, but fortunately we didn't run into any of that.
Before I want John DeLallo to weigh in here on the Iraqi surrendering, but I want to ask you first, Tim, about this issue of fear, because these pictures are bringing back a memory to me. I'm just watching this on TV, reading it in the newspaper, and I certainly remember during Desert Shield, especially, a lot of speculation about if this is to come to war, this could be another Vietnam in the desert. This could be an insurgency. This could be, it is the Iraqi army is the 4th largest in the world. In other words, there wasn't initially the anticipation that this would be a 42-day war. It was really looking like it was going to be a year, 2 years, something like that. So my question is, were you afraid?
Oh, sure. I mean, it was scary kind of going into the situation because the Iraqis we knew were just going to throw bodies at it. And
yes, and human shield. That's another term that comes from that war. Human shield. I think that's from Desert Storm, right? Or no?
It could be, yeah. Yeah.
No, Chris Perello saying no. I think that's okay. Yeah, right. That they were just it's gonna be like human wave attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So you were afraid.
This picture was, I think, taken on the I think there might be a date stamp down in the corner. It may not be showing up here, but I think it was taken on the first or second day of the ground war, and when they were burning the oil fields with all the oil smoke in the background there.
Right, that's it. Yeah, it says 1/17/91, so January 17th.
Of course, as reservists, we get there, and the regulars have been there for a while, and they're just chomping at the bit. And when you watch war movies and those types of things, you don't get to experience the boredom that leads to, just you want to do anything to get out of the boredom, right? And so we walk in, and these guys are just, they're ready to fix bayonets and go at it. And we're like, we just left college 2 weeks ago, and can't wait to get back, but we'll do our duty.
I want to go to John DeLallo because while we're on the subject of Iraqi prisoners, John, you said you had something to add to that story.
Todd, I had the opportunity to go temporary duty down to MacDill, and it was either 85 or 86, and I met some guys down there at MacDill. That were with the Joint Command or Central Command, whatever the hell they called it. And these guys had just come back from the desert and had an opportunity to speak with them. And they had been practicing in the California desert for something that was later written up in Time magazine that I believe was supposed to be classified, but once it hit Time magazine, it wasn't anymore. Our guys, in case anybody wonders why the Iraqi soldiers were, surrendering by the tens of thousands, what we did, we brought the A-10s in, and the Iraqis had, their defensive perimeter was to make a dugout in the sand, put their Soviet tanks into the sand as fixed gun emplacements. The A-10s would come in and wipe them out, and then they would have semicircles of troops, in trenches, if you will, to defend the tanks. And what our guys did was they affixed giant snowplow blades onto the front end of the M1A Abrams main battle tank, and they simply buried the Iraqi soldiers in the trenches. And the fear factor was, for the Iraqis, was absolutely incredible. They found out very, very quickly during that 100-hour war that, yes, the United States is not playing. And if you fight with us, we will indeed bury you right in your position. So rather than be buried in sand, many decided that it would be a better option to go ahead and surrender.
Yeah, surrender was the best outcome.
We had those freedom tickets too. I don't know if you had a copy of that, but they were dropping these freedom tickets to try to get the message out to them that if you surrender, we'll take care of you, you feed you, your family will be all right. Get to see your family again. There's a little psychological warfare going on there.
Is this the freedom ticket you're talking about, Tim?
Yes, that's correct.
That's it. This is it. So it's writing in Arabic on the right, and then on the left is a visual depiction of kind of surrendering to the coalition forces, and you'll be able to see your family again.
Yeah, and these were taken right off of the Iraqi prisoners. They were unloading their pockets as they were going through, getting searched. Got my ticket.
Yeah.
Love America.
And this is another bracing photo. Ugh.
We had one prisoner who had actually just been back visiting Iraq from the United States, who was going to school in Chicago. And he actually had a Chicago Cubs jersey that he had stashed in his gear. So when he surrendered, he was certain to put that jersey on.
Did you?
And he entertained, and we had a busload of these folks, and we had them zip tied and everything like that. But he entertained us with a little Blondie music, that he remembered from America was "The Tide Is High." He would sing to us on the way back to the prison camp, and
Tim, did you find that many of the prisoners, when they came to you, that they spoke English better than you were expecting?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them were educated. Some educated overseas. Yeah, I mean,
interesting.
Very interesting.
Todd.
Yes.
I would dare to say it was that experience that made the people later in the Iraq War believe this same thing would happen, and this is why a lot of forethought into planning and how Americans would be received and how the country would respond was jaded or misunderstood in 2003 based on this experience in 1991. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So can you expand on that, or would you want somebody else to expand on that? In other words, that the expectation was that the U.S. would be viewed as a liberator, not as an occupier.
Right. Two reasons. The Army, and I draw on something my father told me when he was in Italy during World War II as a young boy, an Italian young boy. Nobody wanted to hurt Americans because you had family there, people had visited there, the movies, the culture flowing back even to Mussolini's Italy was American. So you actually identified with the Americans in some way. I think
I would agree with that.
The education that they got, the media, all the things Western that country experienced, because it was quite a progressive pro-Western country, all that for a long time. They really didn't have this real great desire to be killing anybody, let alone Americans. And so now we storm in there like we did, and then we show them these leaflets, and the leaflets had credibility because people who didn't know better would find out from their fellow soldier that, yes, I do believe these words. And so they came about. So that thinking carried over almost another generation to 2003. And I think it's a big mistake we made in 2003, that we expected this kind of reception, and it was not the case.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Opinion anybody.
Wonderful. And what is this? What is this here, Tim?
Just some artwork that showed up on a vehicle, that came into our one of our facilities. What a great artwork! I hope folks have preserved a lot of it, just like they have during prior wars.
I know what the Arabic says.
What does the Arabic say?
I wouldn't say that.
That's great.
You put it in the chat. Was it American who did this?
Ehab asks if it was an American who did this.
That's a good question, because we worked. We were arm in arm with the Saudis and other services.
Typical Joe stuff.
Yeah,
I love it.
Great. And then
I have to say, somebody mentioned the Vietnam veterans, and I really have to express my appreciation and thanks to that group, because we had a number of Vietnam veterans in our reserve unit, and you talk about being afraid, but I really felt comfortable. Like, they taught us a lot. They kind of took us under their wing. We're just a bunch of college kids, and I think if it wasn't for their leadership and them being a part of our reserve unit, I think we would have been in worse shape. And we appreciate both, during the prior, in the peacetime and prior lead up, and then in the conflict itself, we had really some critical people that came from that conflict that were just experienced and smart about, how to conduct warfare.
Yeah.
And really critical. And then I worked for the last 7 or 8 years. I've worked with a volunteer organization out of Pittsburgh that helps transitioning veterans, post 9/11 veterans, and the people that really help run that organization are all mostly Vietnam veterans.
Yep.
And it's because they want to give back and provide for those younger service members what they didn't have the opportunity, to get assistance with or help when they were discharged, and helping make that transition work. And it's just fantastic, to see them doing that.
Yeah, they're the great connectors. They're the great generation that reaches out to veterans of all eras, the Vietnam veterans. But it's interesting to hear them as your kind of mentors, as your combat elders in Desert Storm. What is this? A pickup soccer game in the sand?
Yeah, we almost got in pretty big trouble for that too. Our lieutenant was not very happy about us, being out in the hot sun. But it's like that. If you just try to find ways to stay busy and creative and entertaining, and then get some exercise at the same time. But it was a short game.
The short came because the lieutenant didn't like it. And then this is a great front page here, the end of the war on February 28th, when the U.S. called a halt to it and, didn't go any further into Baghdad. And we've talked about that a little bit. We'll talk about it more, I think, next week. Let me ask you, Tim, what I ask like Vietnam vets and other veterans, what is it like coming home after this experience?
You feel like you've gone into stepped into a time machine, and you come back and you're trying to readjust, to things have changed. It was interesting, it was alluded to earlier. I think Ben mentioned this also, that everybody here knew more than we did about what was going on. And that added to the anxiety that we had when we were there. Information was not forthcoming, and even in our local area, but it was tough making that transition, and you're used to the military life, clear chain of command. The man and woman standing next to you is going to watch your back.
Right.
And that's just a culture that's hard to replicate in anything I've experienced in the business world or otherwise. And probably why I still stay in touch with a number of the veterans that I served with. Because I think it creates a bond. That service just creates that bond that you don't experience in any other way, I think.
Beautifully put. Yeah, I think that's been the big revelation for me, Tim, working in the veterans community, is that what veterans miss the most is each other, is that camaraderie that they have, and that shared sense of mission and purpose. I didn't understand that until I started really working with veterans and really listening to the stories. And I just hear it in every story. Just amazing to me.
Yeah. And I was fortunate, I served with being a part of a MP unit. So we had, female Marines, we had, a lot of diversity, black, white, you name it. And I think that I benefited from that as well. And you feel like you're all service members and soldiers or Marines, first and foremost, and color and your gender and everything else kind of falls to the background. And I trusted that female Marine as much as I trusted the male Marines, to back me up. We had a good unit.
Let me ask people if they have questions for Tim or for anybody else who had experience with Desert Shield and Desert Storm here. Roland, Glenn, you usually have questions for people. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. Or if any of you have comments. I want to know if anybody knows anything about the F-117, that stealth fighter, because I certainly remember being just agog when I saw pictures of it for the first time back then. Yeah, Chris Prolo.
A comment on the 117. I saw a documentary recently, and you're right, it was in existence for a decade before the war, but this was the very first actual second time in combat, because I think it did something in Grenada or Panama, but that was a sortie of two planes. This is the very first time they were going to test the technology again in a real war scenario. And a lot of the pilots were not really that sure everybody was going to survive because they had no relevant combat experience, radars and all those things that they were about to face. But everybody did get in there and got out alive. And you have to remember, once they get to a certain point, they go on radio silence. So they had to go to target, bomb target, get out. And that first day was truly white knuckles mission for them.
Yeah.
But if you remember, after the war, after they revealed this plane and its capabilities, this was the thing to see at every air show in America for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And they tried to get one there just to boast about, hey, look, this is the thing that did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Tom, can I add something?
Sure.
So one of the biggest things, one of the threads throughout the lead up and then after the first Gulf War was, if you think about it, the lead up is intelligence. You got to remember, prior to the first Gulf War, we had been in a 40-year Cold War stance.
Yeah.
I had served in Germany for 4 years as a counterintelligence agent. When I went to the first Gulf War, I was an MP. I had to switch jobs because my wife was a British soldier, a foreign national. So I had to change jobs. I lost my top secret clearance. So when we got over to, and unfortunately, I ended up in a rapid deployment military police unit that prior to the first Gulf War was earmarked. Oh boy.
Sorry about that, Peter.
Yeah,
that is you, right, Peter?
Yeah, that's my basic training photo. And then that was 2 years of MI. Notice the haircut. Yeah. But good. I ended up in a rapid deployment unit that the onus of its mission was Central America, Panama, Honduras, and that. Now, when we got to the Middle East, I actually ran across some guys that I had been, in the intelligence field with. Basically the conversation was, "Hey, dude, well, what the F is going on here?" And even the intel people were like, "We have no clue," because all the intel stuff had been on Germany, and the Eastern Bloc and Russia.
Yep.
If you had talked to anybody before the first Gulf War in the intel community, China was going to be the next hotspot. The Middle East had played no part in it. When the Eastern Bloc countries started falling apart, then it was anybody's game. And the intel community was like, you didn't have enough assets to keep track of what was going on all around the world, basically. So we had to really pick up and switch all our stuff. And it's funny because, like, the reservists, I was an active duty unit. We were a rapid deployment unit, which meant we were usually one of the first people in. Guess what I was wearing when we went into Saudi? I was wearing woodland camouflage. I had jungle boots.
Yeah.
We had the chocolate chip over our flak vests. I mean, we looked like, we looked like the Bad News Bears getting off the plane, and we were active duty, first ones in like September. So it's kind of funny, but that shows you just how, and then every time we had an alarm go off, we had chemical alarms, and every time they went off, oh, Scud missiles are coming in with chemicals, only to find out later they didn't even know how to put the damn chemical stuff on the Scud missiles. So there was nothing to worry about as far as, being gassed or anything like that. But, and then come to find out now, well, a few years ago, that when those chemical alarms were going off, we actually were, I can't remember what it was. Somebody out there might know, but we were actually exposed to, was it sarin? Maybe sarin gas or something now. They're finding out, which might have caused the Gulf War illness.
Right.
But back to my point of, we got caught short because we weren't ready for warfare. The only training we had been doing prior to the first Gulf War, somebody mentioned it out in California, was the National Training Center, NTC.
Mm-hmm.
And not a lot of units went through there. It was always the same units, big Army units that went through there just in case. And a lot of the stuff that nobody knew we had, much as I alluded to in a previous conversation, we used to chase down people taking pictures of the M1A1 when it first came out with the reflective armor. And this was back in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, because it was top secret stuff, much like the stealth bombers and stuff.
Right.
I'm sure the Air Force had the equivalent. Their CI guys were chasing down anybody that was taking pictures at an Air Force base. Hey, what are you doing with that?
That's so interesting. So your intelligence is really for the last war, not for this one that seemed to pop up by surprise in the summer of 1970. John
Right.
DeLallo? I'm sorry, John
yeah.
has his hand up. I just want to make sure he gets that comment in.
Todd, on that F-117, many National Guard units that had the A7D Corsair 2, which remarkably never got deployed anywhere. That was actually a giant cover story for the F-117. We transitioned to the A7 in December of 1974. The official word is that the F-117 first flight was in 1981. And based on, and this is all unclassified now, but based on the information I have, it appears there was at least a fully operational squadron as early as 1975 running out of Nellis.
Huh.
And they did a lot of night flying up at Groom Lake and what have you. Once they, and strangely enough, once the F-117 was revealed, during Gulf War in 1991, it wasn't a whole lot of years after that it was retired. I mean, there's still a couple of them flying,
right?
Test beds, what have you. But the F-22 and the F-35 and so on and so forth, replaced it. But the idea that the F-117 stealth fighter, suddenly popped out of nowhere in 1991 is absolutely wrong. And if you want to look it up, go back and look at a program called Strike Fighter. And that was the big cover story for the F-117. And again, that's all unclassified now.
Right.
It was pretty amazing.
That is pretty amazing. And I know it had a short time lifespan, the F-117. Chris Perello?
Todd, we have to mention that wasn't it an Army unit in Greensburg that was affected by the Scud attack in Kuwait?
Yes.
And there's a memorial out there. I served one of my Navy fellow reservists. Her sister was a casualty. She survived, but she was a casualty of that attack. So we need to mention that we did suffer casualties here in Pennsylvania.
Yes, and I should mention that we want to. I'm really looking for anybody connected to the 14th Quartermaster Detachment out of Greensburg. They were in Tehran on February 25th when a Scud missile came and hit the barracks. 13 members of that detachment, and I think there were only 69, 70 members of the whole detachment, were killed that day. I think 15 others from other quartermaster detachments were also killed. It's the biggest single loss of life of Desert Storm, and anybody who's in Western Pennsylvania then will remember that event. And I'm looking people, if anybody knows anybody connected to the 14th Quartermaster Detachment, I'd love to devote our program on February 22nd, Monday, February 22nd, 2 weeks from today, 3 weeks from today. Right?
Todd, I'm sorry to break in. Colonel Bill Ivel, who is now deceased, was the Judge Advocate General that took care of that unit. And I had an opportunity to speak to him after he did the eulogy for the fallen from that Scud missile attack. And I got to tell you, it really had a terrible impact on Bill, who was later killed in a automobile accident up near Seven Springs.
Was he the magistrate in Mount Lebanon?
Yes, he was. Yes,
I may have been brought before him at some point.
Bill was the guy that was just literally ambushed by a couple of people that from the Dormont Library that didn't like the fact that he let a person off, for some fines for overdue books. And it's an ugly story, but Bill was a brave guy, and his plaque, his memorial plaque is at VFW Post 694 up in Dormont to this day.
Well, I have photos left of Peter Thenns, and I know we have stories of the rest of you. Larry Kilmeyer, you mentioned I would love to hear your story about borrowing some kind of vehicle. The Navy's always borrowing vehicles from other branches, I've learned. I'd love to hear that story. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize I was muted. We don't have time tonight. Sometime maybe Ben and I The F-117 is an interesting development. And I know a little bit about it only because a fellow that worked for me was one of the first pilots and flew one of the first missions when it was test missions. But tonight, it's too late tonight, some other time.
Very good, Larry. I hope if you're
Yeah.
around on Wednesday morning, if you could make it, drop in at some point. Love to talk further about it because I'm so interested in that plane.
I can see if I can get a hold of the fellow that I'm talking about that flew it. But again, it's getting late tonight. We'll do it later.
If you can, Larry, that'd be absolutely wonderful. Fascinating. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us. Thank you. Hey, Dan Vaughn, how are you? Good to see you.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
I have a question for you. You had made mention earlier today about the Vietnam era wasted, about drinking too much. That was also, the terminology was also used during the firefight as to how many Viet Cong or NVA that were wasted.
Yes.
That terminology was also used in that manner.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was exactly. And then it was brought into the culture and kind of used jokingly to refer to drinking too much.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, this is always such an education. It's always such a delight. I'm always fascinated to be in your company. Thank you for joining us. My apologies on the audio issues. I'll blame it on Ellie. Ellie, you got to fix that, all right? And and we'll have it fixed by next time. Hope to see you Wednesday morning, 9 a.m., Thursday night, 7 p.m., back here again Monday night at 7 p.m. All right? Take care. Stay warm, everyone.